Okay. Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time, Masechet Zevachim. This is our 12th class, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 81 through 86. Be'ezrat Hashem, I'll say it again at the end, but Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll go back to our regular schedule next week. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will meet on Wednesday next week. So today we're just on a different schedule. Okay, so we were talking about things getting mixed up. And what do we do in terms of the temple service when things are... So Daf 81 speaks about maybe cups of blood were mixed up, meaning not mixed together, but mixed up. You don't know the identity of which cup goes with which sacrifice. And then we learned last week, but I'll remind us, we have this concept of ro'in, which literally means to see, right? We look at these cups, right? So let's say if we have two cups, and we'll talk about it in a minute, let's say one blood is supposed to go on one part of the mizbeach of the altar and one on the other. So we're gonna put both in both places, and we're going to say the one that's in the right place is great, and the one that's in the wrong place, we're going to see it as if I put water on the mizbeach. That's the idea of a ro'in. We're going to see it as if it is water, and therefore, if I put water on the mizbeach, it's not, I didn't do something wrong. Okay, let's say if again, right, maybe the blood got mixed up in the beginning, but if the blood of, let's say we have two sacrifices, right? So we have, let's say, a burnt offering, the olah, and a sin offering, a chatat. Now, we were talking about last week, what if, before we did anything, the blood got mixed up? What happens if one of them, we already put the blood on the mizbeach and then it got mixed up? So now that blood is what we call shiraim. Shiraim means leftover. So that blood is now leftover, whereas the olah, the burnt offering blood, hasn't been done at all. So we have blood that needs to be on the mizbeach and blood that needs to go on the foundation, on the yisod. So it says you can put the blood on the lower part of the altar, because that's anyway, the lower part is where you're going to put the leftover blood anyway, even though it's generally on the base. It could be also on the lower half of the mizbeach, and that would be okay. Or an opinion is no, the leftover, the shiraim, have to go on the base directly. Now, when I say on the base, I mean right on the horizontal surface, not on the vertical, not on the wall of the mizbeach. And therefore, you actually have to put that leftover blood on the foundation, on the sod. Let's say the blood of a firstborn animal, a bechor, got mixed up with another sacrifice. The blood is valid, and that's only if it's the beginning of both of the temple service. One blood doesn't nullify the other, right? Again, the word in Hebrew is bitul. Bitul means to nullify. And here we say that, and we've seen this before, that if you mix the two bloods, they don't cancel each other out. They're seen as both there. And that's why we can still do different temple services, because both of the bloods are still I guess they retain their identity. I think that's like a good way to explain it. Let's say the blood of an olah, of a burnt offering, got mixed up with its tmura. If you remember, tmura is the 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 animal that you wanted to exchange for that sacrifice. Remember, I think we learned about it last week. Tmura means, let's say you have an animal and this is your olah, it's your burnt offering, and you're like, oh, actually, I like this animal better. Let's make this one my olah. That second animal is called tmura, like it's like the substitute, and it has the same law as the first one. The first one does not lose its sanctity, it just adds to the second one. Let's say the blood of these two animals got mixed up. You can again bring both of them. Both of them are olot, and they're owned by the same person. So you can put it on the mizbeach. Let's say it's two different sacrifices. One is a burnt offering, an olah, and one is a shlamim. One is a peace offering. You can also bring both of them because both of them can be brought voluntarily. You can volunteer to bring either one of these sacrifices. Therefore, you can bring both. Okay, there are different sources. The Gemara brings different sources to teach all of these laws. There's a verse that says, "Vilakach midam hapar umidam hasair." They took from the blood of the ox and the blood of the goat. Now, it has two different sacrifices. So this is teaching that this is before, right? This is from the service of Yom Kippur, where you do the service with both of these bloods, and then you mix them together. So one opinion is that this pasuk, this verse is talking about before they were mixed. Another one is saying, no, it's actually when they were mixed already. There's another verse that talks about taking blood and again taking blood, and it basically is talking about, again, one could say it's talking about these mixtures of blood. Let's say a chatat, a sin offering, got mixed with the shirayim, the leftovers of a chatat pnimi, which is a specific type of sin offering that was done inside the heichal, inside the sanctuary, right? As opposed to a regular sin offering, which is done in the courtyard. So again, they're both sin offerings, but they're done differently. One, the blood goes inside. One, the blood stays outside. When I say outside, I mean in the courtyard, still within the temple complex. If the Kohen put it on top of the Mizbeach, so now you can also put it on the lower part of the Mizbeach, because it is seen as shiraim, as leftovers. As long as there's some blood left, you can pour the leftovers onto the foundation, onto the sod, the base of the mizbeach, of the altar. If, let's say, the majority of the blood is a chatat, now for an animal offering, the chatat is done on the upper part of the mizbeach, of the altar, and then you put, again, let's say it's a chatat and an olah that get mixed together. So you pour then the amount of olah on the top. It shows that for sure some of the chatat went on top, and therefore it's okay. But if the cups got mixed up, so then you need to put from each one of them on top, and then from each one on the bottom. Okay, next Mishnah on the bottom of 81. The blood of a sacrifice that is supposed to be done inside the sanctuary gets mixed up with blood from something that's done on the outside altar of the Beit HaMikdash. So then what do? You have to pour it out because again, if you put it inside, so now the blood that's supposed to be outside is not allowed to go in. And if you put it on the outside, the blood that's supposed to go inside is not allowed to be put on the outside. So we say that you have to pour out the blood and you start again. If he put it on the outside of the mizbeach, of the outer mizbeach, and then he went inside and put it inside, that is valid. And the opposite, right? If he first put it inside and then went outside, that is invalid. Or the opposite, right? Or if it first went outside and then went inside, it's invalid. You have to do inside and then outside, right? So those are two different opinions. And the Gemara is going to explain. Rabbi Akiva says you can't bring the outer blood inside, or only a chatat can't come inside. Only a sin offering that's meant to be outside is not allowed to go inside. Or maybe also an asham, which is a guilt offering, is also not allowed to be inside, but maybe other sacrifices, it would be okay. So now the Gemara explains, really you should do inside and then outside, because inside is seen as more sanctified. However, you can't bring the outer blood inside. That's our problem. So the Daf 82, they give a mashal, right? A parable that it's like a student who mixed wine for his teacher with hot water. I remember used to mix wine with water to dilute it, but the student did it with hot water. And then the teacher asks for hot water. So he could give him with cold water also, right? But he had already given him with hot water, right? Therefore, right, God is saying any blood from the outside becomes invalid if it's brought inside, or maybe no, specifically the chatat, which is meant to be outside. That's why it's not allowed to come in, but other ones would be valid. Okay, next Mishnah on Daf 82. Let's say you collected the blood of two separate sacrifices in two separate cups. And then one of those cups was taken outside of the courtyard, meaning outside of the temple complex. So then that becomes invalid. The other cup is still valid, meaning this is its own sacrifice. So this is still valid. If one cup was brought into the sanctuary, into the Hechal, so now again, it's not meant to be there, so it becomes invalid, and the other cup is valid, or maybe this second cup is also invalidated, and the Gemara is going to explain why. Let's say you brought the blood in, even if you didn't. So what does it mean to bring it in? What did you do? Is it that you just brought it into the sanctuary, and even if you didn't put it on the altar inside, it's still invalid? Or it has to be not only did you bring it in, but you put it onto the altar. And if you brought it in by accident, excuse me, if you brought it in by accident, b'shogeg, it would be valid. It doesn't become invalidated if you do it by accident. And if you remember, we learned that the Kohen Gadol, right, the high priest, has a like a band, a headband that he wears. It's called the tzitz, right? And it says Kodesh leHashem, sanctified to God. This tzitz helps with things. It makes certain things acceptable. Like if you make a mistake, it makes certain things acceptable. So the Mishnah says that it doesn't help if invalid blood was put on the altar, so the tzitz doesn't rectify that. It only helps things that are impure. If something is impure and was put on the altar, which it shouldn't have been, the tzitz makes it okay, and then it becomes like acceptable. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain. The Gemara compares intent to bring outside, meaning out of the Beit HaMikdash, or bringing inside, right? Right. So bringing inside, the blood inside is compared to the blood outside, right? And a verse teaches that if you had intent to use the blood outside, that's invalid. Remember, we did that in the beginning of this Masechet. Remember, we talked about pigul, and we talked about blood that is used, or sorry, we talked about doing a certain avodah, a certain service in the Beit HaMikdash with intent that later you're going to either do it at the wrong time, but also in the wrong place, right? So if you have intent to take the blood outside of the Beit HaMikdash, the intent for that invalidates the sacrifice. So that is about blood, and it's also about the meat, right? If meat is taken outside, it becomes invalid, right? So the verse teaches that blood that goes into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies, is invalid. Also, if it goes only into the sanctuary, into the Hechal, into the Kodesh, not only into Kodesh HaKodeshim, but also into Kodesh, right? The verse says, Pnima, it went inside, and it says it went into the Kodesh, into where it's sanctified. Okay. Now the Gemara talks about okay, right? We're talking about the blood going into the Hechal, into the sanctuary, and into Kodesh HaKodashim. So it teaches that we need both of those things because, well, one would think, wait, why do I need both? Because even when you go into the Kodesh HaKodashim, you pass the Heichal, you pass the first room to get into the second room. So the Gemara says, no, you should realize that you can actually get to Kodesh HaKodashim from the back without going through the Kodesh, right? And therefore, even if you did that, it would still be invalid. Okay, now what about the blood of the chatata pnimit, right? Again, offering that is supposed to be brought into the Heichal, into the sanctuary. What if you brought it into the Kodesh HaKodashim, right? Into the Holy of Holies, right? The next room. Is it invalid? So the Gemara talks about that on Yom Kippur, we take the blood of the par, of the ox and the goat, and it's brought back. Sorry, the blood of the par and the seir, the ox and the goat on Yom Kippur, are first brought into Kodesh HaKodashim, into the Holy of Holies, and then it's brought into the Heichal, into the sanctuary. So now the Gemara asks, what if it's brought back into Kodesh HaKodashim, right? It's not supposed to, but it was already there. Does it become invalid? And the Gemara answers, Teku, we don't have an answer yet to. Okay, Daf 83. The Torah tells us that no one is allowed to be in the Heichal, in the sanctuary, when the Kohen Gadol goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim, even before he does anything. Therefore, if you bring blood into the Heichal, it becomes invalid, even if you didn't put it on the Mizbeach, right? Meaning just the presence of being in the Heichal is enough to make it invalid. It doesn't mean that you have to put the blood on the altar inside. Remember, again, there's a golden altar inside, and there's an altar on the outside, the Mizbeach. Then the Gemara says, no, maybe it only becomes invalid if you actually put the blood on the Mizbeach. But if you don't, so then it would be okay. If the Kohen brought it on purpose into the Heichal, it becomes invalid. Remember, we said if he does it by accident, it's still valid. Now, again, did he put it on the altar? So the verse teaches that it only becomes invalid if he put it on the Mizbeach, if he put it on the altar. Okay, and with that, we finish the 8th chapter of Zevachim. First of all, kol hakavod, everybody. Let's start the 9th chapter. Okay. We ended off talking about blood being put onto the Mizbeach. So now we're going to talk about the power of the Mizbeach. Again, the Mizbeach is the altar. We're talking about the Mizbeach in the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple. So the Mishnah tells us that the Mizbeach, the altar, sanctifies things that are put on it if they're fit to be put on the Mizbeach, and we'll discuss what that means. Rabbi Yoshua says it needs to be things that are fit for the fire to be burnt. If they are put on the fire, so then you don't need to take them off. And we learn this from the verse that says Olah, the burnt offering, just like an Olah goes on, we don't take it off. Anything that's like an Olah, if it's put up, we don't take it down. Rabban Gamliel says it needs to be fit for the altar, not necessarily to be burnt, and we'll talk about what the distinction is. And therefore, if it's fit for the Mizbeach, you don't need to take it off. He learns it from the words al hamizbeach, on the altar. So if it gets on the altar, you don't have to take it off. What is the difference? The difference is blood and libations. Libations, the nesachim, which is a grain offering or wine, would be the difference. Rabban Gamliel says it doesn't come off, and Rabbi Yoshua says it does go off, because these are not things that you burn, right? You don't burn blood. Blood gets placed on the Mizbeach, it doesn't get burnt. So therefore, if you put it on the Mizbeach, you don't take it off. That would be a difference. Let's say you have a sacrifice and its libation, so the korban and the nisachim. If one or both of them are invalid, the meat can stay on the Mizbeach. If it gets put on, it shouldn't have been put on, but if it does get put on, it stays there. But the nisachim have to come off. Now, one could ask, how does one if you put wine on the Mizbeach, how could you take it off? You can't really take off liquids off of a fire. So I did hear one explanation. I have to look into it a little bit more. But one idea was that you brought, let's say, a cup of wine up to the Mizbeach. You didn't pour it on the Mizbeach yet. You still have the cup. This idea is that it's up on top now. Do you bring it down or not? It's obviously, if you poured it on the fire, there's no way to take it off of the fire. So one could say that maybe the idea is that it's still in its cup. You haven't put it on the fire yet, but that is, I haven't looked into it enough, but it seems to make sense to me. Okay, now the Gemara is going to explain what we're talking about. So what we just mentioned is coming to exclude the kmitza. Remember, kmitza is the handful of the grain offering. If it wasn't sanctified, right? Basically, we haven't learned this yet, but part of the service of a grain offering is you take flour, very finely sifted flour, you mix it with oil and frankincense. In general, there are different ones, and then you bake it or you fry it and you cut. It's like this, like either crumbly mixture or it's like a bread, like a matzah mixture. But that, and then you right, that handful of flour mixture needs to be put into a sanctified vessel, what's called a kli sharet. Kli is vessel, sharet means to serve, right? So the kmitza, the handful of flour, needs to be put in the vessel, then it becomes sanctified, and then you continue with the process. So if you didn't put it in a kli sharet, that is not allowed to go onto the mizbeach. And if you did put it on the mizbeach, you need to take it off. Or it could be talking about the emurim. Emurim are the limbs, emurim are the parts of the animal that are burnt when the meat is eaten either by the Kohanim or by the owners. Any korban, part of the animal is still put on the altar. It's usually like the intestines and certain fats. It's like the innards, basically. So the insides of the korban. Now, generally, they are put on the fire after you put the blood on the altar. What if you put it on before the blood was put on the mizbeach? So then you have to take them down because you didn't do it in the right order. That would be different than kmitza, because kmitza, there's nothing wrong with it itself. Okay. So we have different stages of things that we're talking about. We've been discussing things that weren't supposed to be put on the mizbeach, but you put them there anyway. Do you take it off or do you leave it? Now, what about things that were on the mizbeach? Excuse me, they were on the mizbeach, and you know how like when you make a barbecue or a fire, sometimes things like pop off, right? Especially if there's like fat, you hear like a popping sound. What happens if something that was on the mizbeach, on the fire, gets blown off of the fire, right? We'll call it like bursts off the mizbeach before it was fully burnt. So those things must be put back onto the mizbeach. However, if a piece of ktoret, of incense, fell off the mizbeach, you don't put it back on. Let's say a sacrifice was valid, a totally valid sacrifice, and then it became invalid. If you put it, now invalid means it's not supposed to go on the mizbeach, but let's say you put it on the mizbeach, you don't take it down because at one point it was valid to be put on the mizbeach. Or even if it was never fit to be put on the mizbeach, if it went up, we don't take it off. Okay, we said that an olah, we learned it from the word olah. Olah is something that was brought by itself, meaning it's a sacrifice. It excludes the nisachim, the libations that are, I guess you'd call it like addendums, right? There's something that come with a sacrifice. They're not their own sacrifice. Therefore, if the nesachim go onto the mizbeach, we take them down if they are invalid. What about an invalid bird offering, right? A pasul olat ha'of, a burnt offering that's a bird and it's invalid. So we say that we don't take it down, or maybe you do take it down depending on which verse you use to understand these laws. And again, we're going to exclude the grain offering, the mincha. If you put it up, you have to take it down. Now, it depends what type of mincha, what type of grain offering. If it's brought on its own, so then you don't take it down, or there's another opinion that you do take it down, even if it's brought on its own. But if it's not brought on its own, meaning it's brought as part of another sacrifice and it's invalid, you do take it down, right? So the top of daf 84 tells us, again, the same thing, right? A mincha, a grain offering that was brought with another korban, you don't take it off. Another opinion is you do take it off. Nesachim, again, libations that are brought by themselves, you take them off. Or another opinion is you don't. Nesachim that are brought with another sacrifice, everyone agrees that you take it off, or they don't all agree, and some say you do take it off. You don't take it off, sorry. Okay, the next, and when we said that a mincha, sorry, when we were talking about a grain offering, the Gemara says that this is actually teaching us that you can donate a mincha, you can donate a grain offering, even though in general it was brought as a like bonus, like to a regular sacrifice. The Gemara says you actually can volunteer to bring a grain offering. It also teaches us, or it teaches something else, that nisachim, libations that come with a sacrifice, they don't necessarily have to be brought on the same day as the sacrifice. They can even be brought at night, and they can even be brought the next day, even though they're linked to another sacrifice. Because they're not like inherent to the sacrifice, you could actually bring it the next day. Okay, next Mishnah on 84. The following things, if they were put up on the Mizbeach, you don't take them down. Okay, and everybody agrees on these things. So what are the things that if they went up, you don't take them down? Okay, so lan, meaning something that was overnight, right? Either it wasn't eaten or it wasn't sacrificed. It's called lan. It's invalid. It should not be on the Mizbeach, but if you put it up, it's okay. Yotze, which means meat that was sacrificial, that was taken outside of the Beit HaMikdash. You're not allowed to do that. But if you bring it back in and you put it on the Mizbeach, you don't take it off. Tameh, if the meat became impure. If the meat was sacrificed in the wrong time, or right in the wrong place, or if an invalid person did a Kabbalah, right, collected the blood and did or zrika with it, put the blood on the altar, on the Mizbeach, all of these things, if they go up, the Gemara uses the phrase im alu lo yirdu, right? If you put them up, you don't take them down. If you sacrifice the sacrifice at night, or spilled the blood, or the blood went out, so these things, if you put them on the Mizbeach, you actually do take them down. Or another opinion is you leave them. Again, the discussion is anything that's invalid because of the level of sanctity, what we call pasul bikodesh, right? The issues with the sanctity. So then the kodesh accepts it, right? The sanctified altar is going to accept it. But if the thing that is invalid is not because of sanctity, which we'll talk about in a minute, so then it does not help. What is something that isn't, right, that's invalid, not because of Kodesh, but for a different reason, right? These are animals that are not fit to be sacrifices, right? If it was sodomized, if it was used for idolatry, if it was used to pay a prostitute for gambling, if it is kilayim, right? It's it is the offspring of two different animals. If it's a treifa, we talked about that last week, right? Meaning if it's going to die within 12 months, if it was an animal that was born by C-section, or if it has a blemish, all of these things are invalidations, but are not about sanctity, are about like the actual animal. And therefore, if these things go up onto the Mizbeach, you have to take them down. And if these fall off of the Mizbeach, you don't put them back on. Also, if any of these animals walk up the Mizbeach, up the ramp, because they're alive, then you take them off. And if you slaughter them up on top, so then you continue the surface up on top. Okay, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain. There are 3 words in the verses that lead to exceptions. It says, zot, this, he, again, it, and olah. And all of these things come to exclude other things, and they add some of these things that we just mentioned. When the verse says Torah ha'olah, right? These are the laws of the olah. It comes to include certain things that, again, as we said, if they go up, then it doesn't come down. Um, and all the things that we mentioned, again, because their invalidations are holy, are based on holiness, the Mizbeach accepts them. Okay, now the Gemara likes to, make things interesting. So if you slaughter an animal inside the Beit HaMikdash at night, which you're not supposed to do, and then burn it outside, you would be liable. If you slaughter inside a bird, now shchita, remember we said that's not the way to do the temple service with a bird. But if you do shchita inside of a bird and then offer it outside, you're exempt because you didn't do the proper process. Daf 85, if you shecht outside a bird, now outside of the Beit HaMikdash, shechita of a bird is valid. That's how you kill a bird, like if you want to eat chicken. So therefore, you would be liable. Right, again, the Gemara explains because you didn't do malika inside. If you do malika inside, remember again with the finger, then that would make it invalid if you took it out, or liable. Not, then not. Let's say you put the emurim, right, the innards of a korban on the altar, but before you put the blood on the altar, before you did zrika, so then you just leave it there. It becomes what we call food for the mizbeach. It's just going to burn it up. And because you still have the blood, that's fine. You can just put the blood now on the mizbeach. Maybe it depends what type of emurim they are, right? Maybe if it's of kodshe kodshim, things that are already sanctified, then that's why it would be okay. But if it is a lower level of sanctity, maybe it would not be okay. Okay. Let's say we said that, let's say you cut up a kosher burnt offering on the Mizbeach. If it was put up there already, some say you can't now, basically for an olah, after you slaughter the animal, you cut it up into pieces and clean out like the intestines, and then you burn everything piece by piece on the Mizbeach. You shechted it up on top. The question is, do you clean out everything on top of the Mizbeach? On one hand, it seems like you shouldn't do it. On the other hand, some say you can, right? You can wash the innards on the top of the Mizbeach, even though it's not supposed to be burnt. Some say you can, some say you can't. Rabbi Akiva says that an animal with a mum, with a blemish, can stay up. But which type of blemish? He says only for specific blemish. In Hebrew, it's called dukin sheba'ayin, which means a very small blemish that had to do with the eyes. He says because it's so small, you can leave it on the mizbeach. But other korbanot, no, I'm sorry, other blemishes, that would not be the case, and they would have to come down. Okay, now we said, right, if the fire burnt whatever it was on top well, and then it burst off, so then you have to put it back on. But if it didn't burn it well and it wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, we don't put it back on. Parts of the animal that are connected to the meat, right, bones and sinews, you put them on with the meat on the mizbeach. But if it's not connected, you don't put it on. And the Gemara is going to explain, the Mishnah is going to explain that actually in a minute. Okay, let's do the next Mishnah on Daf 85. If, again, the following things, if they went up, now you have to take them down. Meat of wait, hold on one second. Okay. Meat of, again, sanctified things that were not supposed to be there. The omer of the shtei halechem, the extra part of the grain offering, and ktoret. These are not things that are supposed to be there, and therefore, if they are there, we take them down. The wool of the head of a lamb, or the beard of a goat, or bones, or sinews, or horns, right? All of these things in general don't need to be burnt. If they're connected to the flesh, then you put them on. But if they're separate, then you don't put them on. The Gemara explains, again, you only put up meat, right, and blood. You don't have to put up the other things. Now, you don't have to separate them, but if they are separated, you don't put them up. And if they're separate and you put them up, you take them off. Okay, 86. As we said, but the only things that you return to fire if they come off is blood and the meat and the basar. Anything else you don't return, but if you do put them on, you keep them there. Or Rebbe says, no, if they're separated, if you put them on, you actually take them off. Okay, right, bones of the olah, you are actually allowed to use them if they were separated before you put the blood on the mizbeach. After you put the blood on the mizbeach, now everything needs to be put on the mizbeach. Okay, the last Mishnah for today. We talked about if something comes off the mizbeach, right? If it bursts off the mizbeach, you don't have to put it back. Again, you don't need to put it back. These are from the Mishnah above that we mentioned. Also coal. If the coal comes flying off the mizbeach, you don't have to put it back on the mizbeach. Let's say limbs that of the sacrifice that burst off the mizbeach, if they come off before midnight, so you need to return them onto the mizbeach, and you're not allowed to use them, what's called mi'ilah, right? You're not allowed to use it for your own benefit. If it happens after midnight, you don't need to return it, and there is no mi'ilah. And the Mishnah tells us that the ramp, remember, there's a big ramp that goes up to the mizbeach, to the altar. Just like the mizbeach sanctifies things, so too the ramp sanctifies things. So too the kelim, all of the sanctified vessels, also make things sanctified, and that we'll see more next week. The Gemara says, again, meat, if it comes off the mizbeach, you have to put it back on. But if it's like hard or dried out meat, it depends when. If it's before chatzot, before midnight, or after midnight. So the Gemara tells us that the first half of the night is for burning, and afterwards you don't need to return it to the fire. And we learn, if you remember, we have the idea of trumat hadeshen. This was the ashes that were taken off every morning from the mizbeach and put onto the floor next to the mizbeach. Now, normally it was done in the morning, but sometimes it was even done earlier, right? So the Gemara talks about that the time for it is when the rooster crows, but on Yom Kippur, you actually do it earlier because remember, the Kohen Gadol was going to be weak and tired. We don't give him work to do later. So we do it earlier, actually in the middle of the night. And on the holidays, on the Regalim, you actually do it mamash in the middle of the night, because there's so many sacrifices and so many things you have to do. You actually can do it at night. And here we see the distinction of before midnight and after midnight, and how things are happening at night, even though in general, the temple services were done during the day. Okay, with that, we are going to end today's class. It's a little bit shorter than usual, just because it's Sunday and I couldn't do through Wednesday. But we got a few more daf in. And Ezrat Hashem, next week we will meet on Wednesday night, and we will summarize the whole week's daf, including next week as well. I have a few minutes if you have some questions. Yes.
Once a sacrifice has been declared invalid, does that stay? Is that a generalization I can hold on to?
What
you
that
can't change? Can you change it?
No. Good question.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay.
Once it becomes invalid, it is invalid. And generally, it is taken outside of the temple complex and it is burned in what's called Beit HaSrifa, in the place of burning. And it is supposed to be taken away. Now, our Gemara this week was talking about what if, again, the Kohen got confused and he puts it on. Now we have to discuss what we do. But it is not, it's supposed to be taken away.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, so I'm sitting here with this Sodom Mizbeach together with while we're learning, and so I looked up Kmitza, and the Kmitza, it says that you take the 3 middle fingers,
Yes,
not the pinky and not the thumb,
correct,
and that's how much you take out.
correct.
And also the Dukim Sheba'ayin, it
Yeah,
says it's a small blemish in the eye,
yeah,
and ofot, the
birds
that have them
are
are
valid.
valid,
Yes,
because there's no loss of limb.
yes,
So it sort of clarifies why it's okay.
exactly. Again, only according to Rabbi Akiva. Not everyone agrees. Rabbi Akiva says that, again, this is b'di'evid, meaning really it's seen as a blemish, and an animal with this blemish is not allowed to be used. But Rabbi Akiva says that, exactly as you said, because it is valid in a bird, so he says that if you put it by accident for an animal, if you put it on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. Rabbi Akiva would say, though, for a regular animal, we would not allow that as a regular korban. But if by accident you did, then he would say you don't take it down. Not everyone agrees. Others will say no, it's still seen as a blemish and cannot be used as a sacrifice. Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm not sure I can make my question clear, but just to say on DAF 84, we're talking about what goes up, reminding us what goes up should not come down, what goes down should not go up, or these things. And then it talks about an olah offering, that if it goes to the top of the altar and it's still alive, then it should come down. But obviously that should never happen. Don't
Correct.
know how that would happen. But if that happened, they're just saying it should come down. But if it
Yes.
came down, of course, it was set to be an olah offering. So
Yes.
at that point, it'd be like what you already said. Now they've got to take it and process it differently, because it
Yes.
cannot go back up, because it has come down. Is that
again, if it's a valid animal, then it could be cut up and put back as a sacrifice. I think the issue is if it was invalid and then it walked up, you need to take it down.
Okay, that's funny. It walked up. That's funny.
They lose control of.
That's funny.
Again, there are a lot of animals walking around.
So when it said that if it had ascended the top and it was still alive, it should come down. It said if one slaughtered it. So then, meaning that animal, I guess, if one slaughtered it atop the altar,
correct,
then he should skin it and dismember it in its place. Would mean right there where. Correct. He's dispatching it and burn it on the pyre there, which I would hope, I guess, has never happened. Or
I have no idea, but it sounds complicated. But exactly as you said, because it went up, so they slaughter it actually on top, which is fascinating, and I don't know how that actually happens. But I mean,
how would you process the blood? You've got to catch the blood.
Yes, you have a lot of things to do.
And so you'd have to hand it back down
Right.
the ramp
Yes.
to be thrown, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Complicated.
Let's hope it
Complicated.
doesn't happen.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Excellent. Amazing. So wishing everyone, first of all, a Shavua Tov. And also Chanukah Sameach for next week. Be'ezrat Hashem, Sunday night is the first night of Chanukah. So Be'ezrat Hashem, Wednesday night we will meet. So after candlelighting for me, probably before candlelighting for most of you. So wishing everyone a Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
And next week I'll watch the thing because I have a family gathering on Wednesday. So
Okay. Have a great party.
thank you.
Right.